KCAA.
Are you ready for a new experience? To see life from another point of view? New hope, new expression, new joy. This is your radio hour. Welcome to Viewpoint with Father John.
And welcome, friends. You are tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed. And as a reminder, you can follow us on both Facebook or Instagram, whichever one you prefer, or you can do both if you like. I mean, what the heck? I hate to break up a set. So, follow us there, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Father John Reed. And I always feel like there should be something after that, dot something after that, but there's not. It's just that Father John Reed.
That's
Father,
the weird one.
Yeah, Father is spelled out, and Reed is the proper Irish R-E-I-D. So, and if you miss an episode, you can go to YouTube, and in the search bar, just put Viewpoint with Father John, KCAA, and you get the whole 4 years now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yes. First week of February will be our 4th anniversary. And I just don't know what to get the station manager
Is there
for
cake
that.
or something?
They already ate it. Speaking of that, all of God's children are endowed with extraordinary purpose and ability. I'm on a quest to help as many as possible in fully realizing their divinely inspired potential. Disposing a false narrative and embracing genuineness inspires clarity of purpose. My role is to help overcome self-imposed limitations in realizing one's spiritual potential. And folks, I want to tell you about the best pharmacy in Southern California, which is Claremont Pharmacy. And I bet you wouldn't guess this, but it's located in Claremont, California, on the corner of Indian Hill Boulevard and Arrow Highway. And if you haven't gotten vaccinated yet, Dr. Nikki Ho, who owns that, she has all the vaccinations. You can pick whatever brand you want, and she has the boosters.
And she's good with needles, huh?
She's very good. You know what? She handles all my vaccinations, where it's flu, everything. You never feel the needle. She's that good. And anyone who knows me will tell you, I'm not afraid of too many things, but a needle, I don't like.
Really?
And I'll tell you during the commercial break why, if you remind me. But there's a legitimate reason why. So definitely go see Dr. Nikki over at Claremont Pharmacy. She's fantastic. And if you want the best DJ service that you will find in the entire West and maybe the entire continent, as far as we're concerned, it's lakesidedjservices.com. And our beloved Frank owns this establishment, and he does a great job. I hear nothing but fantastic reviews, even if I have to be the one to write them. But it's really good. But Frank does a fabulous job. You know that by the way he runs the show. And he also has a photo booth, and the photo booth is a lot of fun. You go in there, and they have different signs you can hold up, or if you want to wear costumes, all kinds of stuff. I went as the Invisible Man, and I didn't come out in the picture.
But did your sign show up?
I didn't. Yeah, for rent. And
Okay.
So, as you can tell, it's going to be quite a night. And lastly, again, I'd like to remind you of my friend Glenn Kirshner with his YouTube program, Justice Matters. If you really want to know what's going on, Glenn Kirshner is the guy to follow. And Glenn's a good friend of mine. He was just on Joy Reid today, and I sent him a little text of what a great job he did. He's a stand-up guy. You know what? I think if he tried to tell a lie, his tongue would break off. He's just really the real deal. 25 years as a federal prosecutor, 6 years in the United States Army, 6.5 years in the United States Army as an attorney, as a prosecutor. The man is simply made of integrity. And I don't say that about...
It's a rarity.
Yeah, and I don't say that about anyone who doesn't deserve it. So again, Glenn Kirshner, Justice Matters on YouTube. I think you'll really be happy you checked it out because you'll get real information, not hyperbole. My guest this evening is a dear friend of the show and a colleague, which is our good friend Jill. And Jill Johnson Young is a LCSW. She does local, state, national, and international speaking on grief and loss and dementia. She also does online training for therapists and telehealth for clinicians. And she's co-owner and CEO of Central Counseling Services. And she has a fantastic, well, she has a couple of books, but the one
Five
that
of them.
5 of them, in fact. But the one I have read that Frank is just putting up on the screen now is The Rebellious Widow. I really recommend this book for anyone dealing with grief or anyone having anticipatory grief, that you're going to be walking through it, because there's really important information, particularly if you are living with someone who is terminally ill. This is the best book I've seen, and as a hospice chaplain for many years, I've seen a lot of books, and this one is really one of the best books I've seen on being prepared for what happens dealing with medical people, dealing with paperwork, knowing what your patient's rights are, and how to make good decisions, and how to protect yourself. You know, I think
Which is
that's
a
something.
necessity.
Yeah, that's something we miss quite a bit, because we think, well, we're going to the medical people for help. They should be helping us. Sometimes you have to know how to advocate for yourself, because you may not realize this, but doctors tend to have egos.
No.
Yeah.
Is that why when a loved one of ours was in a hospital recently, I became known as that woman downstairs making phone calls?
That would be it. That would be
Because
it.
you got to be able to advocate for the patient.
That's right. But that was weird. You breathing heavy in the phone. But I
Right?
appreciate the
But
call.
it got where it wanted.
Oh, folks, can you tell it's going to be a fun night? But actually, reason we're opening it up with a little levity is the fact that what we're talking about tonight is extremely important. And so I hope that you find this very helpful. I know that I will, because one of the most difficult things to do is ask for help, particularly in the Western culture, where we're told that the weak man surrenders, the strong man wins, and that's not the truth. When we walk these things alone, it is such an abandonment, not just from other people, but an abandonment to ourselves. And so,
And it puts us at risk.
yeah, and sometimes people just don't know how to ask for help. And so, Jill, I wanted to ask you a little bit, how do we help people ask for help?
You know, I frequently talk to people about raising a white flag.
Yes.
Because we have this thing, especially here in the U.S., but it is worldwide. And I work in dementia and have a dementia support group that I co-host with my dear friend Ilse Ertz. And in that group, we constantly have to say, but you need to ask. There are people who are available. There are services. You need to ask. If your siblings aren't helping, you need to ask. Right. Because we have this, I don't know where it comes from, because we were not all pioneers.
Right.
And this whole thing about Westward Ho and the wagons and circling up and do it yourself, they didn't do that then either. They were a whole big, everybody was in a community.
Right.
Right? Laura Ingalls Wilder's family tried to do it alone, and it did not work out with the big bear thing. So
Yeah.
you need to have somebody in your corner, and you have to learn to ask. And caregivers especially, and people who have illnesses, they don't ask.
Yes, and I think one of the things, I call it magical thinking, where we think that people can read our mind and know what our needs are. And that's not a put down to anybody. I'm as guilty as anyone of this. I had to learn how to ask for help. Mm-hmm. And I found as a trained professional, it was even harder for me to ask for help, because I should know these things.
Well, you had to learn to even admit you needed help. Walking with a cane was a challenge for you.
Right, right.
I carry my cane proudly. I'm going to use it, otherwise I'm a bad weeble. So get over it, and if you get too close, I can hit you with it. You have to have some levity when you're asking for help and you're accepting help and you're putting out there that I can't do this by myself.
Well, I can remember when I got my handicap placard, and I didn't want it. I really didn't, because I felt it was calling me weak. I felt like I didn't stand up to beautiful. Now, I wouldn't say that to anybody else. Someone else, I'd say, get the thing.
You need it.
But
right?
For me, I don't deserve it. And so I had an appointment with my rheumatologist, and Gabby gave me the option. Either I can ask or she'll go with me. And when she goes with me, I get outed on all kinds of
Good
things.
for you, Gabby.
And so I had the plan. How do we make God laugh? See, I have a plan. And so what I did was I timed it so that my appointment was over. Dr. Tremazzi is walking down the hallway one way. I'm going towards the exit. And I say, oh, by the way, Doc, Gabby wanted me to ask about a handicap placard. I said, it's her idea, not mine, so it's okay to say no. He didn't say a word. He was right by this counter. He turned, pulled this form out, which was for the DMV, filled it out. He says, sign it. He signed his. He says, now sign your name here and take it to the DMV. I've been waiting for you to ask for this for 2 years.
My question is, why didn't he just offer it?
Because he figured I was a hard-headed Irishman, and,
Yeah.
and because of our professional relationship, I think he just thought you don't tell a fellow professional.
And that's where medical professionals don't get all the help that they need.
Exactly, and
they should.
right. I've had a number of physicians send their family members to me for counseling, and then at some point I'd ask, when are you coming in? And really what they needed was permission.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a little bit of the thought
They
I thought
needed
we
their
talked
need
about.
recognized.
Yes, and to know that it was okay and they weren't a bad doctor because they needed help.
Mm-hmm.
Doctor doesn't stand for emotionally stable, and that's not a put down to anybody.
When I train therapists, one of the first things I say is, if you're going to do the work that I'm training you to do, which is end of life, grief and loss, dementia,
Right.
all the things in that neighborhood, I will say, if you're going to do this, you need a therapist, because if nothing else, you need a place to go let it out at least a couple times a month.
Well, I can remember some years back, I had Kaiser at the time, Lord save her soul, and I decided, you know what, from the trauma I have dealt with growing up, I need to get help. And I was really feeling the depression, and so I made an appointment to see a therapist. And you know how you do the background stuff at the first
The
appointment.
assessment, yeah.
So I wanted to save time, so I sent him a copy of my resume. And at the first appointment, he referred to me by the form, well, Dr. Reed, I received your resume, and I have to say I'm somewhat intimidated. I said, what for? He says, you have so much specialized training that I don't have. I said, I'm not here to compare resumes. I'm here because my butt's fallen off and I need help.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, the biggest job will be keeping me on the couch and not in the therapist chair so that you can help me. And, every once in a while, I'd be dialoguing with him and he'll have that look. And I'll say, am I in your chair again? He says, yes. Why don't you be patient today?
Very nice. That's really important.
It is.
Right?
And he did it in a way that didn't hurt my ego, because that's important too. I really have an issue with people that try to tear people down so they can build them back up. You're just tearing them down, and you're not helping them
not
become who they
therapy.
are. Right.
That's not therapy at all. It should be meet them where they are and provide the support. And if someone's dealing with any kind of illness or any kind of caregiving or any kind of whatever they need help with, what they need is more support, not less. And they need
Exactly.
someone who can invite them to ask for help.
So how do we make it so that it's a welcoming experience for somebody to go ask for help who doesn't know it's okay to ask for help? What are some ideas that you might have on that?
That's a big loaded one. One of the things that I like to have people do is make a list of everything that they do during the day and what things they wish they didn't have to do that someone could help them with.
Oh, nice.
Right?
That's-
So if it's a parent who's got kids at home, do they need someone to go get the kids from school or take them to activities so they get a break?
Right.
Right? I have a friend who's a colleague, and she's on her 4th pregnancy right now, and she's got little people, and she just needs someone to get the kids to and from school so she can take a nap.
Right.
Right? That's important. And other people need someone to go to the pharmacy, or they need someone to bring in hot meals. And if you have a special diet, they need to know what that involves.
Yes.
And if there are food allergies, you need to say so.
One of the things I found as a hospice chaplain, sometimes I would talk to people a little bit like this, and they would say, I don't know what I need. So I say, well, let's sit down and exactly what you're talking about and see what you're doing and your
Laundry.
approach as
Who
well.
wants to do laundry? If you want to help someone who's dealing with illness, go pick up their laundry, wash it, fold it, bring it back, and ask them if you can put away the towels and sheets.
Yeah.
Right? Change the beds. That's stuff that takes a lot of energy, and you could use that energy somewhere else.
Right.
Right?
Right.
If someone can't drive them to the doctor and then take them out to lunch afterward in a safe place with open doors or an outdoor eating area, of course. But, that kind of stuff.
And I always say and ask if they feel strong enough to go to lunch. Because I have a friend, he and I on Fridays, we usually have lunch together, but we always ask each other because we both have terminal illnesses. And we ask each other, do you feel strong enough today? Or do you want to take a rain check? And just that permission makes it easier because we both know that we both have permission to say, I'm not strong enough today.
Right. So my mom has dementia and she's at home. And on Saturday, my oldest daughter is turning 30.
Wow.
I feel old.
Yeah.
And we have a late lunch out planned. And she said, well, it's late. It's early enough in the day. Maybe Grandma really can come. And I asked my mom, and she said, I just have to let you know that day because she has some other health issues. And every day is a different day for her. And that's something to remember about someone who's got illnesses.
Exactly.
Right? She's also in her mid-80s. She gets a break. If she wants jammy day, she gets jammy day.
My friend's in his 80s too.
Right? Jammy day rocks. When I'm in my 80s, there will be jammy days.
Yeah. Well, speaking of jammy days, Frank is looking at me like we better go to commercial break.
Oh, it's jammy time.
Or I'm going to be jammed up. So you're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personal funeral planning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran-owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to make the Tri-City Center in Redlands a regular part of your weekly shopping experience. Tri-City is home to a wide assortment of quality businesses, including the all-new Ocean Aquatics. Check out their variety of exotic tropical fish, along with fish food, accessories, and tanks of all shapes and sizes. The Tri-City Center is located just off of Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. Visit the Tri-City Center today and find out why it's called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back, friends. You are tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed, and my guest this evening is my dear friend, Jill.
Jill Johnson Young, the total troublemaker social worker.
Yes, yes. I couldn't get my change to my page to change over here. You know, I'm not good with computers. What do you want? We both
And
know
sometimes they don't like us.
Yeah, I'm having a relationship issue with mine. So,
There's therapy for that, but I'm not the one.
That's right. I have to go to Tron.
That's right.
Anyone who's old enough to know what I'm talking about,
We'll fill you in later.
we probably all have handicap plates. So
That's right.
So now that's some of the physical needs that we were talking about before commercial break. And those are very important. I'm not downplaying that.
They're the ground of being able to cope with someone who's sick.
Right. And so once those are somewhat on track because I don't know about you, but I've never seen them be 100% on track. But you can
No.
get them to a
They
good percentage.
shift.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because they're going to change. Now, how do we help them
Emotionally.
ask for emotional help?
Same thing. Are you getting enough support? Do you have someone to talk to?
Right.
Do you have someone who will just come over and let you just talk if you want to, or just sit quiet with you and let you have another human being in space with you?
Right.
Right? Because with most illnesses, the person who's sick is becoming a little more withdrawn. Anybody who's sick has days where they just don't want to see people.
Right.
And so that leaves the caregiver literally sitting in a chair in the living room, available, on call, paying attention. Their level of attentional is like way up high, but nobody to talk to.
Right.
And they need that because illness makes everybody's world smaller and isolated.
That's true.
You lose people, you lose relationships, people back out, they don't know what to say.
Right.
They'll say things like, I just don't want to see them like that. I just want to smack somebody when somebody says that. Just let me say that out loud. Because they don't want to look like that and they don't want to be like this, but they're still here and they need your company.
Right. And someone who's not going to come in and try to fix it for them.
Or tell them they look great.
Yeah.
People who are chronically or terminally ill don't want to hear, oh, you look terrific.
Yeah.
Because they may, but if they're not feeling terrific, then they feel like they have to buck up and do that whole be strong thing.
I get that quite a bit. People, well-meaning people saying, well, you don't look sick. Well, my illnesses don't usually manifest on the outside until the very, very end. You can't tell that my heart is in a place where I could just go to the floor like that, and they don't have to know that.
Right. Most illness is actually hidden. There's very few sometimes if someone's wearing O2, then okay, you can tell there's a problem.
Right.
But unless you're hauling the O2 tank or have a concentrator on your side,
Mm-hmm.
or you have obvious surgical stuff, or you have, the lack of chemo hair,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe. But most of the time, folks don't look bad. They just don't have energy and they feel bad.
That's why I think one of the most important things we can ask is, how are you feeling?
Mm.
And then however they respond, respect that.
Mm-hmm. Or even preface it with, I totally can't even get what it's like to live with your illness. And I know lots of people with illnesses don't like to say how things really are. Mm-hmm. Because we're trained to say, oh, I'm fine.
Yes.
It's the number one lie on the planet is I'm fine.
Well, FINE stands for frustrated, insecure, neurotic, and emotional.
Exactly. Right? So anybody who's depressed, has anxiety, is sick, has substance abuse issues going on where they're fighting the demons, any of those things, process addictions.
Oh, yeah.
They are not fine, but they're going to say so because we've all been trained to smile.
Yep.
And say, I'm fine.
We used to say, smiling on the outside while dying on the inside.
Right.
And I can remember years ago, I grew up doing live theater over at the gallery in Ontario. And Mark Shipley was our director, a brilliant director. And sometimes we'd do a gaffe and he'd say, just smile, maybe they won't notice.
Right? That's what you do in choir, too. If you don't hit the note, wasn't that beautiful, right?
Yeah.
Run with it.
Yes. And when you're having the emotional things, the one thing that really gets me is when someone says that they're depressed and people say, well, just cheer up. And
it's all in your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's called a neurotransmitter.
Yeah.
And it's lacking.
And my experience has been a lot of times people don't know how to handle other people having emotions because we're afraid of our own emotions.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm not saying this to scold anybody. I'm saying, when we are aware, we do better. But we have to have some awareness, some introspection for that to take place.
And we have to give people permission to have those There are those who really are the buck up by the bootstraps, and they don't believe people actually can be debilitated by something in terms of mental health.
Yeah.
It's entirely possible to be debilitated. That's why the checklist for depression includes lots of physical symptoms.
That's right. That's right. Some people have symptoms and they don't know that those symptoms are from depression.
Or they have symptoms from illness, which also create depression.
That's right.
Because depression is related strongly to anything inflammatory.
Yes.
So if you've got any kind of inflammatory process in your body, you're going to be looking at some kind of depression. And the evil twin of depression is anxiety. You get this muck, like all of a sudden. And you can have flares with some illnesses. And those flares are painful and they cause a greater depression.
Right.
I have lots of clients that when they come on my camera during the day, their camera's blacked out. I have to see them for a moment, make sure they're okay. And then they say, the migraine's just so bad today. So they keep their camera on, but the lights are out. And you can tell in their voice they're not okay.
Right.
But they wanted to make that connection with me because I'm the only connection.
And it's an important one. It's a lifeline.
Mm-hmm.
And if you've never been without a lifeline, you may not realize how important these lifelines are, particularly if you're feeling isolated and you feel like nobody gets it.
Mm-hmm. And that people minimize it.
Right.
Right? Because
Right.
illnesses are easily minimized by the medical community, which is a sad fact.
Well, yeah. I mean, when I started dealing with the excruciating physical pain, I had a doctor say to me, well, it's, you're having the pain because you're depressed. I said, no, I'm depressed because I have the pain. And yes, I realize that depression enhances the pain, but let's not forget which came first. We're not doing a chicken and egg thing here.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get doctors to listen sometimes. So if that's what's going on, make sure that you fire your doctor and find one who listens.
And if you're able to have somebody with you who could also
Verify.
get the doctor's attention, right? I had surgery for cancer on my face a while back. And after the surgery, after I had the stitches, I was having something happen over here. And I'm trying to tell the doctor, and doctor's just going on like nothing happened. His nurse kept saying, Doctor, did you hear what he said? Now, the nurse happened to also be his daughter. It took her 7 times before he got, there may be an infection going on over here.
Right, right. Well, I had surgery last month, and right before the surgery, one of the doctors coordinating it sent me this email saying that it looked like I had been doing things like binge drinking from my labs. And I sent him an email back, and I said, I have celiac disease. It caused damage. I'm not drinking. What are you talking about? And I had to send him research.
Right.
Because he didn't know, and he went automatically to the go after the patient routine. And we had to change it up.
By the way, just a heads up for people using pure CBD that has no THC, it still shows up on the blood test like you're doing marijuana. Just so you know that. That happens to a lot of people, and their doctor will say, are you using marijuana? They say, no.
Yeah, but he was like, no, you're all the values. It looks like you're doing X, Y, Z. I'm like, no, I have an illness. And if you could educate yourself about the illness, you would know that's what it's related to. And this is not about poor me. It's just a matter of, if you've got doctors who don't listen, you either have to do the education or find a new doctor.
Right. And both are important. You have the right to speak for yourself and to be heard.
Mm-hmm.
Don't forget who's working for who.
Right, right. Unfortunately for women and people of color, it is largely that you need a male with you.
Sadly, that's true.
And you need someone with lighter skin, or you don't get hurt as much. And that is not me accusing all medical professionals. I have very, very many dear friends who are medical professionals, but that's the reality in general in this country and most of the world. And so you have to be able to make yourself heard, which also makes it hard to ask for help.
Right.
Because if you feel like your doctor doesn't hear you, why would anyone else believe you?
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
That's why there's so many stories of people who use handicap placards, and then people follow them into stores yapping at them saying you shouldn't be using that, when in fact they have an illness nobody can see.
Yep. And there are people who do that, and it's not very caring of a society to do it, and we have to recognize that it's happening in our society.
Mm-hmm.
You know, a friend of mine used to say, in order to fix a problem, it helps to first know what the problem is.
And let the patient define it.
Yes.
Right? It shouldn't be that hard, but you need to know that you're being heard. And if you're someone who's in the position of occupying the patient chair, then you need to start thinking about what it is that you need for support, whether it's emotional or physical, financial.
Yes, that's the big one.
Finances are a big deal when you are facing illness.
Yes.
And there's resources out there that folks don't share.
Yes.
I know lots of people who should have been getting in-home supportive services here in California, and they just never knew they existed. They just assumed I have to do this by myself, which is why asking is so important.
Right. And also, as we went back earlier, sometimes helping them to know some of the questions to ask.
Mm-hmm.
And your approach, I love, you know, what are things that you do that you wish you didn't have to do? What are things that I'm adding to that, what are things that you need help with that you don't think you can get help with? And a lot of times you are correct. I need help taking care of my loved one
Mm-hmm.
because it's just me.
Make a wish list.
Yes.
If you're having trouble making meals and you've got someone out of state who says, I really want to do something, and they have some means, give them the names of 3 companies that deliver meals already prepared that get delivered once a week,
Oh, that's a great idea.
and let them sponsor you.
Yes. And particularly those of us in the caring profession, we have to realize that while we're used to giving and we enjoy giving, we're robbing people of that joy too if we don't let them give to us.
That's right.
And case in point, I'm going to be doing a retreat in a couple weeks, and someone offered to drive me and bring me back. And at first, I declined because my ego.
Mm-hmm.
But it only lasted about 15 minutes, so I'm getting better.
And that's a hard one. Driving is something, especially in states where driving your car is how you get around.
Yeah.
There are some very nice areas where they have things like metros that run 24/7
Right.
and get you where you need to go.
And
We don't have that here in Southern California.
That's true. And mainly it's the distance to where the retreat is. It's 50 miles, almost 60 miles away from where I live. And driving that distance is so physically painful for me.
And exhausting by the time you get there.
And so, I called the person back and I said, if that offer is still good, I'd like to take you up on it.
Good for you.
And they were happy to do it. And I was talking to a surgeon buddy of mine and telling him about that. And we're emailing back and forth. He says, you've always been a giver. And you know how good that feels. Don't you think other people would like to know have that good feeling too? You're being selfish if when they're offering, you won't let them do that.
Right.
But I also say, don't offer if you don't mean it.
No, don't say I'll do anything you need. And then when someone says I need, say I can't. If they finally say I need, then find a way to do what they're asking.
I keep waiting for someone to ask what I need so I can say, can you paint the apartment?
I had someone come and mow our lawn before. We were between lawn people.
Yeah.
And we were in the middle of the throes of illness, and somebody showed up and did the lawn and cleaned up the backyard. It just feels so good to look out and see things nice.
Well, I had someone offer to mow my lawn, but they wanted me to lay down in front of the mower first.
Yeah, well, I would, because, I don't like long hair anyway. It would have been fine. I'm good with the buzz cut.
Yeah, it hurts when they go to get more line, I'm telling you. Just ask my barber. But so sometimes what we need help with is finding out what our needs are.
Mm-hmm.
When I was 18, I was on retreat with a Jesuit friend of mine. We're still friends. And I've been on my own since I was 14. And so when I turned 18, and this goes into what we're talking about, I said to him, Father Tom, I've been on my own since I was 14. I'm now 18, and I don't feel any different. I don't get this being adult stuff. He said, John, being an adult is simply finding out what your needs are and getting them met. I said, that's it? He says, that's it. No one ever gave me that information, and there's a lot of people out there who have never been given that information. They don't realize being an adult is simply finding out what your needs are and getting them met. And sometimes finding those needs means we need someone to be able to ask us good questions, because we've been so toned to, you're not supposed to have any needs. Right. And that's where we go from surviving to living.
That's why we have the hierarchy of needs. It's, yes, you need to have a place to lay your head that's safe, and you need to have warmth or cool, depending, and you need some food in your stomach, but you also need to have nurturing and caring and connection. And if you don't have that, then that's the thing to ask for. And there are lots of ways to get that these days.
And that's what most people don't know. There's resources that I'm having to find out now.
Well, this is a resource for lots of people. You sitting here is a resource for folks.
Well, I hope so.
It is.
I truly do. Speaking of resources, Frank's looking at me like we need to do the resource to the paying of the bills to go to the next commercial break. You're listening to Viewpoint with Father John, and we'll be back in 90 seconds.
The loss of a loved one is one of the most challenging experiences in a person's life. It's hard to know where to turn to make your loved one's final arrangements. Jesse Ruiz at Personal Funeral Planning in Ontario will treat you and your loved one with the respect you deserve. Jesse served in the Marine Corps in Desert Storm and understands what it takes to provide loyal, personalized, and empathetic service to those who need it most. The families of Michael Jackson, Brittany Murphy, Ed McMahon, and many others have trusted Jesse to provide them with the highest level of service and support. To work with Jesse, call 909-762-4027, 909-762-4027, or visit their website, www.4pfp.org. www.4pfp as in personalfuneralplanning.org. Jesse Ruiz and Personal Funeral Planning, veteran owned and operated, helping you plan a personal, lasting tribute for your loved one. www.4pfp.org.
It's time to make the Tri-City Center in Redlands a regular part of your weekly shopping experience. Tri-City is home to a wide assortment of quality businesses, including the all-new Ocean Aquatics. Check out their variety of exotic tropical fish, along with fish food, accessories, and tanks of all shapes and sizes. The Tri-City Center is located just off of Alabama and the Tennessee exits in Redlands. Visit the Tri-City Center today and find out why it's called the Mall with a Heart.
And welcome back. You're tuned to NBC Radio, KCAA, 1050 AM, 102.3 FM, 106.5 FM, or you can listen from anywhere around the world at kcaaradio.com. This is Viewpoint with Father John. I am your host, Father John Reed, and my guest this evening is Jill Johnson-Young. She's an LCSW, and author and speaker and all kinds of stuff. She teaches other therapists how to do therapy, and she's wonderful in dealing with the situation of dementia and how to live with people who are terminally ill.
Mm-hmm.
And
she's been widowed twice. That's part of
that's what I was just
the
going
learning
into.
Curve there.
Yeah,
yes.
I was going to say not all of her learning came from books. It's come from the experience. And I think that's really important because there's some things that cannot be related on the printed page. There's some things that have to be related heart to heart.
There's learned experience, lived experience. There was all the time I spent in hospice. You don't know this stuff until you've been this stuff.
Would your learning, when you're just learning this, what were some of the hardest things for you to learn that you didn't know?
I needed to learn to let my spouses identify their symptoms and their needs before I spoke up at the doctors, because I'm a little forceful. And I needed to really learn how to put things in order of priority.
Right.
And to make sure that everybody in the family had the time that they needed. And I needed to learn not to try and make things perfect.
Wow. That really hit me deep about the family members and not trying to make things perfect.
There were days that, things didn't get clean. There were days that dinner was a picnic on the bed and all the kids piled in and it was Del Taco night or whatever.
Yeah.
And then I just rolled up whatever paper cloth we were on and that went in the trash. And that was good enough.
That's very wise. And I know it took some learning, I would imagine, to allow yourself to say, I'm pooped. I'm tired.
It's hard to do that when someone's terminally ill because you feel like I need to make sure I get all the good stuff in and every day needs to be a really good day. And that's impossible. And that's stressful for the patient.
Did you ever deal with this where people are asking you, are you doing this and doing that, and felt like it was criticism and they're just asking some questions?
Frequently. And people do make all kinds of suggestions, and sometimes it is criticism.
Right.
And sometimes, but this happened to my goldfish, so it should happen to your goldfish too.
Right.
And I just want to say stop. That's why I like Emily McDowell's greeting card line, because she tells it like it is. She's got one that says, if this is all part of God's plan, God's a terrible planner. I mean, he's good with unicorns and ice cream and stuff, but this stuff it blows, right? I like that kind of stuff. And I had to learn to have a sense of humor and to blow people off when I needed to.
St. Teresa Avila, she had kind of sense of humor, and she fell off a mule one time, and she looked up at God and says, if this is how you treat your friends, no wonder nobody likes you.
That's kind of the way it is. Yeah. Yeah. And you have to learn as a caregiver to not allow other people to direct how things happen. If you know how your family and your home needs to be, then you set your boundaries. And if other folks don't fit, then they just don't fit. You don't need to squirm and move around to make other people fit in who don't understand.
Right. As a hospice chaplain, one of the things I found, was just one of my things. There were some times where the case was appropriate where I'd say to the person, I think you need to write an anger letter to God.
Mm-hmm.
I can't do that. Well, why not? Have you never been angry with your parents? Have you ever been angry with your kids?
It's unfinished business. You need to speak into it and say the words.
And how can you feel love from anyone or from spirit if you can't even be honest about how you feel? That's an arrangement. That's not a relationship.
Yeah.
And it's amazing how when they've done that or have a shouting match with God, not in front of the patient, of course, how then after that it's like, you could just see a whole different look on their face because they've been holding that in because they didn't know it was okay to be angry with God.
And it's been blocking them.
Yeah, and it's not, and I'm not implying that God did this because things happen in this world that I think God has nothing to do with, okay? They just as part of the living condition. And if we can't let that out, if we don't transform our pain, we'll transmit it.
And it'll make us sick.
It'll make us sick, and also will affect the way that we're caring for our loved one.
Mm-hmm. Because they'll pick up on it.
Speaking of loved ones, I'm going to digress for just a second. For those of you watching on YouTube that see this floral arrangement right in front of us, Gabby made those. And she does floral arrangements. I'm not trying to sell anything here. I just want to acknowledge what a beautiful job she did on this.
She brought it out to us in between parts of this, and it's just stunning. She made it while we were sitting here.
And so now
it's beautiful to look at and smell.
Well, I'm the thing that smells so good. But
let him think what he wants.
Yeah, she says I'm a real lily. And so she says she refers to me as stinkweed. But
there you go. Better than skunkweed.
Yeah. Yes. But again, folks, if you didn't get this so far in the program, I think what we're trying to say is it's okay to ask for help.
It's a necessity to ask for help.
And it's okay to not be okay.
Absolutely. Things don't have to be perfect. You don't have to be okay all the time. You can be angry. You can be upset. You can also have a good day.
Yes.
It's okay to have joy and laughter while someone is sick or you are sick.
Sometimes.
I heartily recommend it.
Sometimes loved one needs to be able to laugh.
Oh, yeah.
And sometimes they're trying as hard to take care of us as we're trying to take care of them.
And if it's something like dementia or they're taking meds that are diminishing their cognition, then they need to have a little more leeway. So you need to let them go at their own speed while they're doing it. Don't get impatient, which is hard.
And usually when we're exhausted, it's hard to have that patience.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why sometimes the need, I think you would agree, is sleep or rest. You know, in hospice, I know you know this with your experience, they have a thing called respite. So that someone can get away for a couple of days, and members of volunteers from the hospice team will come and stay with your loved one for a day or two, so you can get away. Sometimes
Some
just overnight.
hospices can do that. Hospice benefits are they're
Going
kind
up
of
and down,
funky, and sometimes but there's always a way to get some extra help in there. The hard part is for the patient to feel safe enough to allow their loved one to go,
Right.
and for the loved one to leave and know that their patient's going to be okay. So
Yes.
do a practice run. Do 4 hours.
Exactly.
Go out and run some errands and have lunch out with someone and come back and see how it went.
Yeah, and if usually, and I'd like to know what your experience with this is. My experience has been usually there's one member of the family that takes care of everything, and everyone kind of disappears.
Yes.
And and sometimes there's a real resentment and anger because, hey, why are you leaving me to do all this? There's 4 of us kids. Why am I the only one here? And sometimes it's because people are afraid of their own they don't know how to deal with it emotionally. And you're taking care of it, so they're going to let you take care of it. It's okay to say, I need some help. And to go down the list. And sometimes that help can be, can you stay with mom overnight?
Right. And you have to, on the other side, if you're that family member that's not front and center, you need to listen for the messages that says, I need help.
Right.
Because if someone asks once and you ignore them,
They're
they're not likely to go back and ask again.
You're absolutely
Right.
correct.
We just lost my beloved father-in-law right after Christmas.
Yes, I'm sorry.
And my wife had been living with him for 6 months because he needed the help and she loved him to pieces. And so she had some wonderful time with him in that 6 months. But she was primary and she didn't want to leave him. And even when she left the house for a little while, there was always that pins and needle. Like, we need to get back there.
Right.
Right?
Yes, I absolutely get that. And that's why it's finding out what your needs are so you can get them met.
And to be able to get people to meet them where they are. And that can be hard.
Yes. And when you find that someone is not reliable for that, then don't set yourself up for the continual hurt. Just realize, I wish they were, but they're not available for this. So you don't waste your time with them. You can find someone who is reliable, that is able to practice presence and love with you and with the patient.
And that also means that if someone is diagnosed with an illness, start looking early for where
Right.
the hired care comes from. Because
Good
if you get to
advice.
crunch time, it's going to be too late. And there's not a lot out there. COVID has really impacted
Yes.
caregivers worldwide, and finding help worldwide, whether it's for little people or big people or older people, it's hard to find help. And it's hard to find reliable help. And programs have changed. The VA just changed their caregiving program
Did they?
dramatically, and they're dropping people who have traumatic brain injuries and are quads because the formulary changed. Like, there's a formulary for help.
Right.
And VA, if you're listening, yes, I'm criticizing you. But I'm a social worker. It's what we do. We need to make sure
Yes.
everybody's getting taken care of. And private agencies don't have as many people. So start looking early and often and make sure you have them lined up so it's not a crunch.
Yes. And in that, sometimes the most difficult part, and we've talked about this in other shows, is getting a proper diagnosis.
Which is really hard. It really is. And lots of illnesses hide. And lots of people don't fess up to their doctors where their symptoms are.
That's true.
So make a symptom track, right? If you go to the page for the Rebellious Widow, the website for it, yes, it's almost 9 o'clock and my words are failing me, then you will find actually a free download. This is not an advertisement for something paid. There's a free download for managing illness, and it's got a symptom tracker. And you simply write down every single symptom head to toe, and you take it with you to the doctor. And if your loved one's not doing it who's sick, then you caregivers out there, make sure you do.
One thing I found helpful, because particularly in my case, doctors have been afraid to say what the actual illnesses are. And so what I did was when it was really clear, I typed out a 1.5-page thing on the computer so I could have copies and put to each doctor. And before my next appointment, I made sure each one had a copy of that. And before I went in, I would ask, did you read the letter? And if you didn't, let's make another appointment for after you read the letter.
And that's unique. Most people won't do that.
I was desperate.
Yeah, caregivers will sometimes do that. It's something I advocate that people do.
Yeah, it was at that point that they realized, my doctors were in denial of how bad it was. And after they read that letter, they were no longer in denial because they realized, oh,
This is serious.
this is what's going on.
Right. Well, 50% of doctors will not tell someone with dementia that they have dementia.
Tell me
Ever.
about it.
And they won't tell their families either. And they feel powerless and they feel helpless, but powerless and helpless is not a good reason for leaving someone hanging.
Well, even when you've been properly diagnosed, there'll still be doctors that say, well, it may not be true. And I've had that problem.
Or it may not be that bad. And this is not a terminal illness. It's going to go on for a long time. You don't know that. And it is a terminal illness.
Yes, it is. Yes,
Dementia,
it is.
there's only one way out of it. It is a terminal illness.
Yes, exactly.
And I'm sorry you have it because I really hate that. It sucks.
It does. And I'm a couple of weeks ago, I broke down the show a little bit because I had discovered the day before that I've gone to the next level.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a painful pill to swallow. And
It is.
The night before, on Wednesday night, Gabby and I were sitting in the living room, and the tears just finally started coming. And I just let myself bawl my eyes out and let her hold me when I said, I'm not able to surrender yet to this. I'm just becoming aware that I've crossed that next line, and I've been denying it for a while. But with what happened on Wednesday, I knew definitively.
Things have changed.
Yeah, and so fortunately, I in a relationship with somebody who I'm able to have that kind of honesty with and get support there. And I'm grateful to our listeners. I received some very tender emails and stuff from the listeners because I've promised them that I would take them along with me on the journey. And so I got, during part of the show, I got choked up and I just, let the tears fall. And part of the time I couldn't talk, so I kept clearing my voice, my throat in the microphone, because if you have dead air for too long, FCC sends you a little fine for that. But
Well, that's not nice.
no, well, and NBC,
We need to teach them about
KCAA are very,
dementia.
very happy to let me pay for those fines too. So
Right?
anything after 6 hits of the dump button, you owe the engineer $1 for each one.
I'll make sure, Frank, we will never do that while I'm here. Right? Yeah,
so-
it is hard, and it's hard to acknowledge that things have changed. And
Right.
I know that it's waiting for me too, because my genetic code says I'll have late onset Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
So it's waiting for me around the corner at some point. But I'm going to have a powder coated, tricked out walker, and it is going to have a wine bar on it. We are going to at least be comfortable while we are dealing with this.
Wow.
Right?
Wow.
I know that's not an option for you, but it's going to be an option for me.
No, I was just I could still
Or an ice cream
I could
bar.
still
Maybe an
romance
ice cream
it.
bar instead.
No, my diabetes. It makes my neuropathy crazy.
Oh my goodness. You got to figure something out.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. There's got to be a sweet out there somewhere.
Let's leave it at that.
All right.
Okay.
You got flowers.
I'm not driving tonight, so
That's true.
that's the other thing I gave up. I'm no longer driving at night.
I saw that. Yeah.
And, so that's part of the surrender. And you've probably experienced this. I know we're in the last 2 minutes, but one of the things that people hate to give up is their keys.
Right. Oh, no, it's a horrible experience to give up the keys. Nobody wants to.
Right.
It was really hard for my mom, and she still fights us back sometimes. Stacy's dad was very gracious about it.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a little tenuous for a little bit. When, please, yes, please mean please mean that you really meant it.
Well, Gabby and I do this thing every Thursday night where I say, do we want to take my car or your car? And she just looks at me, she says, we're taking my car. Get it.
Good for you, Gabby.
So,
Frank and I appreciate that.
But she allows me the freedom to ask the question and be able to have the humor with me, because I will sometimes actually forget I'm not supposed to be driving at night, and it's not because I get confused. So
and it's hard not to drive. I didn't get to drive for about 6 months after my stroke. It's hard to be dependent.
Yeah, and she won't let me get a motorcycle. So
Tell you want a Spider. It's got the 2 wheels out front.
I'm afraid of spiders, but I thought that was a slingshot. Anyhow, well, we're down to our last minute. How do people get a hold of you? Because they're going to have more questions about this. First of all, I really want to make sure that they get your book. That's so important. And I'm not here to sell books. At the same time, this is a must-read book.
It's a pretty good book.
It really is. I don't recommend books that I haven't personally read. And so, The Rebellious Widow. How can people get a hold of you?
You can find more about the book and the first chapter of the book, actually, at www.therebelliouswidow.com. And you can find more about me at jilljohnsonyoung.com. And you can find me also at centralcounselingservices.com. I'm really simple.
Perfect. Well, you've been listening to Viewpoint with Father John. If no one's told you that this week that they love you, let me be the first. And Dr. Smith will be in for me next week, so be sure to tune in. He does a wonderful job. Bye for now.
Bye, everybody.